My mother didn't even try to hide her excitement. She sat at the polished mahogany table like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. Chin high, pearls resting neatly against her collarbone, fingers clasped in a way that made her wedding ring catch the light. The Will reading room smelled of old carpet, legal ink and the faint citrus polish used on the bookshelves. My father adjusted his tie every few seconds, each tug sharper than the last. My sister, radiant, confident, glowing as if the spotlight had been custom designed for her, crossed her legs and whispered something smug behind her hand. Me. I sat quietly at the edge of the table, hands folded, back straight, feeling like a guest in a movie about my own family. Attorney Marshall closed the door with a soft click. He took his seat at the head of the table, opened a thick folder with deliberate care and exhaled deeply. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "As you know, we're here to review the final distribution of Mr. William Hart's estate. My grandfather. The only man in our family who ever saw me without comparing me to someone else. The only one who didn't treat me like decoration or background noise." Mom leaned forward eagerly. Yes, let's get started." Attorney Marshall cleared his throat and lifted the top document. "As per Mr. Hart's instructions, the first distribution is as follows. A check for $10 million issued to your eldest daughter." He slid the check across the table. My sister gasped dramatically, even though she clearly expected it. Her hand flew to her chest. "Oh my God, Mom, Dad, look." Mom made a soft, joyful noise. Dad clapped her shoulder, pride radiating off both of them. I watched quietly. Then my father turned to me with a look that wasn't cruel, just dismissive in a way that felt practiced. "As for you," he said with a dry chuckle, "maybe this is the push you need to work harder. Earn your own life." Mom nodded, lips pursed with that familiar mixture of pity and superiority. "Your sister's always been the capable one, Lily. You'll find your way eventually. Earn my own. Find my way eventually." Funny how they always assumed I was wandering. Lost. Small. A shadow behind my sister's golden shine. My sister tucked the check into her purse casually, like a menu she'd take home for later. "Don't be upset," she whispered across the table. "Success isn't for everyone." The insult didn't sting. Not the way it used to. Because something in me knew, quietly, steadily, that this moment was not the ending they believed. Attorney Marshall tapped the folder. "There is one final item," he said. "A sealed envelope Mr. Hart left, specifically for Lily." The room froze. My sister paused mid-smirk. Mom's jaw tightened. Dad's fingers went still on the edge of the table. "For me?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Yes," Marshall said. "He handwritten this envelope and requested it be opened only in your presence." My sister scoffed. "Grandpa meant to leave me everything. Maybe it's a thank you card." Dad leaned back, arms crossed. "He probably left her something sentimental. A photo, a letter. Nothing significant." Mom nodded in agreement, tone sharp. "Yes." He knew Lily wasn't ready for responsibility. I felt the familiar ache. Not from their words, but from how effortlessly they said them. Attorney Marshall lifted the envelope slowly. Cream-colored paper. My name written in my grandfather's shaky but elegant handwriting. The room seemed to hold its breath. "I'll read it aloud," he said gently, "with Lily's permission." I nodded. "Go ahead." He slid a finger beneath the flap, opening it with a soft tear that somehow sounded louder than everything in the room. Inside was a single written page and another sealed packet beneath it. Marshall unfolded the page. He paused, took a breath, and began reading. "To my granddaughter Lily. You have been overlooked, underestimated, and spoken over for years. Not because you lack worth, but because those around you lack vision." My mother stiffened. My father's eyebrows shot up. My sister's face reddened. Marshall continued, voice steady. "You are the only one who sat beside me in my final years. The only one who asked about my day. The only one who listened without agenda." My heart tightened. A memory drifted in. Me sitting beside Grandpa's garden bed, brushing dirt off tomatoes while he spoke about his childhood. He had looked at me then the way no one else ever did. Like I mattered, plainly and entirely. Mom spoke through clenched teeth. "This is unnecessary. He loved all of us." Marshall ignored her and kept reading. Because of that, I am entrusting you with what truly matters in this estate. Dad laughed, but it wasn't confident, it was nervous. The check was already given, he said. What else is there? My sister nodded eagerly. Yeah, what else? Grandpa didn't have anything bigger. Attorney Marshall set the letter down and lifted the second sealed packet. Inside was a thick stack of documents, contracts, deeds, legal transfers. He flipped the first page and read. Full ownership transfer of Hart Industries to Lily Hart. The air drained from the room. My mother's hand flew to her necklace. My father's mouth fell open. My sister choked on her own breath. Hart Industries. My grandfather's company. The company my father worked for. The company my parents assumed my sister would inherit someday. The company worth far, far more than $10 million. Marshall continued. Effective immediately, Lily Hart is the sole heir and controlling owner of Hart Industries, including all assets, properties, patents, and accounts. Silence pulsed. Thick, stunned electric. My sister slammed her palms on the table. No. This has to be wrong. Dad, tell him this is wrong. Dad couldn't speak. Mom pointed at the lawyer, voice cracking. She's too young. She doesn't know anything about running a company. This is absurd. Attorney Marshall's tone sharpened. These were Mr. Hart's explicit, notarized instructions. My mother shook her head violently. He would never choose her over us. I felt something shift inside me. A mixture of grief and vindication. Of love and liberation. A truth clicking into place. He did, I said quietly. Because he saw me. My sister stood abruptly, trembling. You don't deserve this, Lily. You didn't earn this. I met her eyes calmly. And you did. She opened her mouth but no sound came out. Dad finally found his voice. You don't understand the weight of this. You need us to help manage it. No, I said, surprising even myself with how steady my voice sounded. I don't. The truth settled like a slow exhale across the table. Something irreversible had shifted. I wasn't the girl they dismissed. I wasn't the placeholder. I wasn't the background. And as they stared at me, in disbelief, in fear, in recognition, I understood that this moment was only the beginning. Next week, Attorney Marshall said, we'll finalize the transition. My family stared at me, confused, angry, afraid. And I sat there breathing in the air of a life I had just stepped into. Just like Grandpa knew I would. My sister was the first to break the silence. She pushed back her chair so violently it scraped across the floor, the sound sharp enough to cut the tension already hanging in the room. No, she whispered. No, this isn't happening. I'm the one who was supposed to inherit the company. Grandpa promised, he promised me. Attorney Marshall's expression didn't change. He promised you nothing, he said calmly. Your grandfather recorded a video. You'll all watch it shortly. Mom's face went pale. A video? Dad tried to regain control, puffing out his chest the way he always did before lecturing. This entire thing is a misunderstanding. Lily is too young, too inexperienced, to handle a company of this size. Marshall tapped the stack of documents. Mr. Hart thought otherwise. Dad scoffed. He wasn't in his right mind those last months. But the lawyer's expression sharpened. I assure you, he said, Mr. Hart was more lucid than you think. He anticipated that you would question his judgment. That's why he made a very clear record. He lifted a remote and pressed play on the monitor mounted on the wall. The screen flickered, then stabilized. And there he was. Grandpa. Alive. So. Eyes bright with that strange combination of gentleness and steel. He sat in his hospital bed, the afternoon sun painting his room in muted gold. His hands rested on the blanket, folded neatly. When he spoke, his voice was soft but unwavering. If you're watching this, it means the truth has finally reached the table. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. My sister stared, stunned. Dad's shoulders tensed. Grandpa continued. I love my family. But love without honesty is useless. He paused, breathing slowly. I have watched for years as praise, opportunity, and attention were poured onto one child, while another was quietly pushed aside. My sister swallowed hard. My mother's hand trembled. Grandpa's gaze on the screen turned slightly, as if he were looking at each of them through time. Your treatment of Lily was not subtle. And it was not fair. My throat tightened, but I stayed still. You assumed she was weak. You assumed she lacked ambition. You assumed she would always be fine with less. He shook his head softly. But she did not lack ability. She lacked recognition. Mom closed her eyes in pain. Grandpa continued. Every conversation I had with her, she listened. Every visit, she showed up. She asked questions. He cared. She was present. My sister shifted uncomfortably. Meanwhile, he said, the rest of you were present in body but not in heart. Dad let out a breath through his nose, like he wanted to argue but didn't dare. Grandpa smiled faintly. My company requires integrity, patience, intelligence, and, most importantly, humility. Lily has all of these. He sees people. She sees truth. And she sees herself. He leaned back slightly, his voice softening. As for the money, I left each of you exactly what you showed me you valued. Mom looked confused. Dad looked furious. My sister looked afraid. Grandpa concluded. Lily is the future of this family. If you cannot treat her with respect, you do not deserve a place at her table. The screen faded to black. Silence followed. Deep, echoing, undeniable silence. Then my sister erupted. This is insane. He never said any of that to me. Why would he do this? Why would he leave me with nothing but a check? $10 million, I reminded gently. She ignored me. And give her everything else. She's younger. She's inexperienced. Mom grabbed her wrist, trying to calm her. But my sister pulled away. No, Mom. This is wrong. Lily can't run a company. She doesn't deserve it. I looked at her steadily. And you do. Her jaw tightened. Dad stepped in, trying to reassert control. You need us to guide you, he said firmly. This company is too big for you alone. It was meant to sound supportive. It sounded like a warning. I folded my hands calmly. I don't need guidance from people who never believed in me. Mom's eyes softened, guilt clouding them. Lily, we didn't know you wanted more. You didn't ask, I said softly. You assumed silence meant limitation. Mom looked like she might cry. My sister, still shaking, glared at me. So what happens now? You just take everything? The company? The decisions? The legacy? All of it. I held her gaze. Yes. The word hung in the air. Clean, simple, final. Dad tried again. Lily, think about the impact on the family. I am thinking about the family, I said. For the first time, I'm thinking about myself too. Mom wiped her eyes, stepping closer. Can we fix this? Can we start over? We didn't realize the damage. I nodded slowly. I'm willing to try. But not at the cost of losing myself again. My sister's voice cracked. What do you want from us? I thought for a moment. I want to be treated like I matter. Not as an accessory. Not as the afterthought. Not as the fallback plan. Mom nodded, tears falling freely now. You do matter, she whispered. We just forgot to show it. Dad finally lowered his gaze. We were wrong, he said quietly. I was wrong. And for the first time in my life he meant it. The shift was not dramatic. Not explosive. Just real. A gentle recalibration of what family could be. Attorney Marshall closed the folder. That concludes the reading. Lily will arrange your board introduction next week. My mother placed a tentative hand on mine. Will you have lunch with us later? I smiled softly. We'll see. Not a yes. Not a no. A beginning. I left the office with the packet of documents tucked under my arm. Outside, the winter breeze brushed against my cheeks. The city hummed, alive, steady, full of possibility. My phone buzzed. A message from a friend. How'd it go? I exhaled. It went the way it needed to. I walked down the steps, lighter, stronger, unburdened. My grandfather had seen me. Long before I saw myself. No. The world finally had to see me too. I whispered into the wind. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. Then I stepped into the next chapter of my life. Where I belonged. Where I was chosen. Where I was meant to lead. Sometimes love reveals the truth.